Hey y'all, it's Katie. Hope everyone's doing well. Today we are talking about This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. This Savage Song is the first book in the Monsters of Verity series, the second book of which will be coming out later this month. I've been hearing amazing things about Victoria Schwab's writing for forever. I know she writes the Darker Shade of Magic trilogy and the Vicious series, and I think there's something else. I just hear nothing but raves about her. So I was so excited to finally get my hands on this book. In the world of This Savage Song, every time a great sin is committed, a monster is born. And these monsters are kind of like ravaging the land and killing off people, and it's a really dangerous place. Somehow, in the midst of the chaos, these two men rose up and kind of created safe havens in the city of Verity. There was like this huge war, and they split up this city between them. To the north is Callum Harker's territory. Callum is not a good person, and he creates order by having some of the monsters work for him. He has somehow bent them to his will, and people have to pay him for his protection. And if you're under his protection, the monsters kind of leave you alone because he will retaliate more than it's worth. On the south side of the city, Henry Flynn presides, and he provides protection for all by means of incredible order. There's curfew, and it's incredibly strict, and there are a lot of rules, and if you break any of the rules, that's it, you're done. In this story, Callum Harker's daughter Kate, who has been out of the city of Verity for the last 5 or 6 years, is finally able to come home, and she starts school in the city of Verity, and everything is not what it seems. We also meet August, Henry Flynn's son, who also happens to be a monster. August is a very complicated character, and he's kind of dealing with whether or not he's good, because he wants to be good, but he's not human, he is a monster. Kate is kind of trying to prove to her father that she is his daughter, she wants to be a part of his world, and doesn't want to get shipped away to another boarding school outside of the city. Eventually, of course, their stories do collide, and that's when things get interesting. I gave this book a 9.5 out of 10. I really, really loved it. I'm so glad that I finally started reading some Victoria Schwab. I can't wait for the second book in this series to come. It's kind of got some darker undertones, and I think we're going to delve more into that in the second book. I couldn't highlight in this book because it's actually my friend's that I'm borrowing it from, and I've never wanted to highlight more. There are so many applicable quotes, so much real-world application in this book. I would definitely recommend it. We are about to get to the spoilers, so if you have not read this book, now is your time to leave. Nice to see you. This book was so good. The only issue for me, I think, was probably the pacing. It kind of felt like we would have these long stretches where we would kind of jump around and there would be time in between, and then all of a sudden the same day would last for like a chapter, 3 chapters, 4 chapters. I love this premise. I think the idea of the fact that monsters are born from sin is so interesting, and that different kinds of sins evolve different kinds of monsters. I love it. I can't wait to see where she goes with it. She can go so many places, delve so far into that topic, but I'm really wondering about the implications of in Harker's half of the city, only the rich can afford to live, and I think that that's an ongoing motif in life as well as in literature, so I'm really interested to see what she does with that, as well as the differences in classes and peoples in the two cities, what happens when they go to war. It's kind of like the dynamic of soldiers that are natives and soldiers that are mercenaries, and are Harker soldiers going to be as loyal as Flynn? We open this story with Kate burning down a chapel. It was kind of a really bold move. Either you were about to love this story or be like, what the heck? I definitely think that it succeeded in pulling me in as a reader. I kind of like the way that she set up the prologue. With Kate and August, you kind of get to see where they're at, and you're about to see where they're going to be. You get a little bit of understanding of their character and what their goals are. We find out that August is the third of the Sunai, they are a family, because we don't exactly know what they feed on, how any of it works. You get to see August, who with regard to Leo is kind of the younger brother of the shining star. His brother's super famous, really good at everything, he's in the army, blah blah blah. Ilsa, she has kind of the feel of someone who's so powerful that their mind just couldn't contain it all, so they kind of lost it a little bit. She has a lot to say, really important things. She has a lot of really good morals, but she kind of just isn't all there all the time. It's so cool that they're created from like the biggest kinds of disasters, the universe's way of retaliating on humans when they do those kinds of things. I really wonder about what does it mean that this is how monsters are created. We get to Kate, and she is living with her father again, and his Malachi named Sloane. Right off the bat, we don't like Sloane. He's like constantly frightening Kate, and she's trying not to show it. She's doing all this to prove herself to her father, but it seems like he just continues to not care. We keep getting all of these mentions back to her mother's death. She doesn't really ever explain it, so you're not really sure what happened. We get to the school. All August has ever wanted to be is human and good, and all Kate wants to be is bad and cruel and strong enough. We find out that August feeds by sucking people's souls out by playing music, and then he can kind of just take them. Kate like sneaks in when he's having this torture session with some of the Malachi, and she offers to stab one because she wants to like show him that she's such a badass and strong and whatever. She does like stab this Malachi and is like, thanks, and leaves. And you can kind of feel this like darkness building within her, and then she collapses as soon as she leaves. And I think that it's really important to understand her character, to get her to see her progression into whoever she's going to become, whether that person is good or bad. It's important to understand that like however callously she seemed when she did this, it did get her afterwards, and I thought that this was so realistic, so good for her character. Then after Kate and August have this interesting discussion, she wants to figure out who she is, and after she notices that he's never looking in pictures, she takes some of her own and figures out that he is a Tsunai because she's kind of brilliant, and so she's kind of trying to decide what to do. August is like worried that she figured out who he is, and everyone's like, oh, you're just being paranoid, like it's fine. When she shows up to pick him up, and she has like ropes and all this stuff to hold him hostage in her trunk. Every scene that we have with Leo, he's kind of just like creepy and odd and really dark, and he kind of explains that he can go back and forth between going dark and not going dark because he has like control over it or whatever, but August explains it as there's no human left in him. The more we see of him, the more I'm just wary of him. It's with Ilsa, who's so sweet and loves the cat, and for some reason she can't leave the house, and we don't really understand why that is. It's never really explained to August. There was the scene with the cat where kind of whether the cat would like receive him or not was like a good bad metric. Like whenever he was normal, the cat loved him, and then after he went out with Leo and like just killed the guy and sucked his soul, the cat would not come near him. I'm really curious as to how the cat's gonna receive him after this book with everything that happened at the end with him going dark. Like, I don't know, that just seems like something that she could do a lot with. Then we find out that Ilsa created the Baron, this huge gap in the middle of the city where a bunch of people died and there's just nothing left. It's like there was some kind of huge explosion, and August is told that this was done by his sister. Of course, the power of the Tsunai has been mentioned all throughout the book, and we've been told that like people die whenever they go dark, bad things happen, they have a lot of power, but it's never really been explicitly stated. And then we find out that this huge devastation that everybody always talks about was created by the sweetest and kindest of souls, who is apparently so powerful Leo refers to her as the Angel of Death. We get back to the school, and there's this attack on Kate by two of the rogue Malachi, but she figures out that they're trying to frame August. August is kind of in his room playing, and he hears her scream as he's leaving. He comes to save her, and there are already bodies on the ground. He manages to save Kate, and they kind of go on the run. They both get injured in the process, pretty much mostly Kate, because August is kind of impervious. He kind of has to stitch her up, and they have to keep going because nowhere is safe, because Kate thinks that Sloane just tried to kill her. August is starved, and he doesn't tell Kate. Kate does try to contact her father in a coded way as they're traveling. Ilsa shows up at this hotel they're staying at to warn them, and she stays behind to kind of like protect them while they're running. They get to the safe house that Kate and her mother lived in for years, that no one ever found them and that it's impossible to find, and somehow the safe house is attacked, which is so sketchy. When the safe house is attacked, one of the attackers is a human. She's pretty sure that he is there to capture or kill her and August, so she goes to kill him to protect herself, only to realize that it is a human and she's now taken another human life. This whole time, Kate hasn't really had to worry about August being a threat because she is not on his diet at all, because she's not a sinner. Her soul doesn't glow red. So even when he plays his violin, he's not a danger to her. Now that she has killed this man, her soul glows red, and she has to run because he's starving, which at this point he's told her that he's on the verge of going dark because he's starving. And so she has to run because otherwise she is now edible. Sloane shows up and says that Ilsa is dead, that he killed her, and August kind of loses his shit. And while she's talking to Sloane, she's like, I'm so confused. He said that you told him. Like, he said he talked to you and you were not the person who tried to kill me. And since monsters can't lie, she believes her father when he told her this. And when she's talking to Sloane, she realizes that Sloane isn't the one who lied, and her father was behind and on board with this whole plan to kill her and frame it all to start a war with the Flits. Sloane then also reveals that he's planning on taking over Harker's half of the city because Harker's no longer fit to rule or powerful enough to rule. Leo then shows up. August is tortured into going dark, which is what Leo has been trying to encourage him to do throughout the entire book. And once he does go dark, August attacks and kills Leo. So now we're kind of wondering, what are the implications of this? What's that going to mean for South City now that one of the most powerful people in their military is gone? What about for August, who's just murdered his brother? Like, how is he going to handle that as someone who's always fighting so hard to be human? At this point, we're freaking out because August has gone dark, but somehow he comes back from it and frees Kate, and then she asks him to come with her because she wants to confront her father, but she wants to make sure that he's honest when she confronts him about it, so she brings August with her, and then they part their separate ways. She leaves Verity, and he goes back to Southside, and we end the book. I'm really wondering if in the series we are going to kind of have a debate about the humanity, existence of monsters, because definitely I think that there are going to be like social issues with the people being like, oh, but they're not real, like they don't matter, they're monsters, they're not people, and at which point August and Ilsa are going to be like, what? Like, are you saying that we're not real? So I'm wondering if there's going to be like debate over their validity and humanity. I'm wondering if we are going to get more in depth of how these monsters do come into existence. I think it's a really interesting concept. Most of all, though, how did August come back from being dark, and what are the implications of his being able to do so? What does this mean for who he is when he's not dark now? And is he still going to be stuck in like a half-dark state? What does coming back from going dark so easily mean for August? I really loved Victoria Schwab's writing style. It's so beautiful and captivating, and it's not over the top trying to be so flowery and beautiful. It just is. It feels almost like an average writing style that's so much better than average. Like, she just writes to write and it comes out perfectly. I'm really interested to see the impending darkness that we are going to get in our dark duet later this month. I was really interested in the fact that there was no romance in this first book, although I do love, love, love romance. It's always really interesting when there is no romance in YA. I'm not opposed to romance in the next book. I liked getting to see them just function as friends throughout the story. And last but not least, of course, what's going to happen in book 2? What's going to go down for Kate since she's no longer in V City? What about August, who's now kind of having to take up the mantle of Leo? Who are they going to be now that all of this darkness has happened? They've both kind of tainted themselves somewhat. Kate has now killed a man. August has now killed his own brothers. I think it's going to be very interesting to see who they are when they're dealing with the ramifications of these things that they've done in book 1. So that is all I have to say today about this Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. If you have any thoughts or anything that I missed, please let me know in the comments. None of my friends have read this, so I'd love to talk about this. Bye y'all, have a good one.